Shatter the Silence, Criminal Injustice, Indivisible, Lambertville-New Hope, Civil Rights Springboard, 7th April 2019.
Action Group team. And we've been putting together this really exciting gathering today. We're so excited and honored to have our two speakers with us. Cindy's going to introduce them in a few minutes, but we have Patrick Hall from the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow Greater Trenton Chapter. And Shiva Graham has come all the way up from the DC area, and he is with Witness to Innocence. I'm going to try to talk quickly because we are in a little bit of a time crunch. It turns out the Acme Screening Room is having their first movie start at 4, so it was a miscommunication, so we're going to move along. But the first thing I want to do is just point out we have exits over to the side, and the restrooms are over here in the hallway if you need them. I want to thank the team that has been putting this meeting together, Cindy and I, along with Deb Monaghan, Ellen Gibson, Lisa Bergson, and Kathy Franklin. And I especially want to thank Kathy because she is the one who started both our speakers and got them here today. I didn't realize how much work this was, and I also want to thank so many members of Indivisible who helped us put this together in so many ways. A lot of them are here today, and you know, press release, graphic, everything helped us out, so I want to thank them also. Let's see. Yes, if you're able to make a donation, we are going to donate as much as we can to these really important, great organizations. We have a jar up here, and there are also donation jars out in the lobby. Also in the lobby, if you didn't get a chance to see, we have a scale model of a solitary cell. So if you didn't look, it's on the floor, and it's really striking if you get a chance to take a look at what a typical solitary cell looks like. We also have postcards for people from New Jersey and from Pennsylvania, so we'd appreciate if you can fill those out today, and we'll get them sent out, so if you can leave them. We also have a lot of information on the windowsill. One thing that we would like to start after this event is a book club, and the first book we're going to read is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. If you're interested in joining the book club, leave your name. We're also doing a book drive for an organization called Books Through Bars, which sends free books to people who are incarcerated, I believe in 7 states. We have a flyer out there. If you are able to donate dictionaries, thesauruses, a few other genres, there is a drop box at the library here in Lambertville. The last thing I want to say, considering our time budget, is we do want to have a question and answer period at the end. We're going to have both speakers speak first and then do the questions later. You'll see that there are note cards. If you have a question, we're going to ask you to write your question. If you don't have a pen, just kind of look around and someone will hand you one. And you can pass your note cards out to the perimeter. We'll collect those. We'll give you a couple minutes. I believe Shuja's going to speak first. A couple minutes in between speakers, write a question, and then you can write more, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And before I have Cindy introduce our speakers, I just wanted to say that Indivisible, Lambertville-New Hope, is an organization, for some of you who aren't familiar with us, that educates and unites citizens in actions that support values. There are 12 values. Some of them are democracy, equity, inclusivity, respect, and social justice. And for us, why this is important to us as the civil rights group, I believe that criminal injustice is the civil rights issue of our time. When we started the Civil Rights Action Group 2 years ago, we discussed so many different issues, and we found that again and again, our civil rights issues came back to mass incarceration and criminal justice. Racism, discrimination, income inequality, voting rights, access to opportunities like education and employment, segregation, immigrant rights, etc., all in some way tied back to mass incarceration. Though the abolition of slavery and overturning the Jim Crow laws made racial discrimination and segregation illegal, the criminal justice system keeps discrimination against minorities, the poor, and the mentally disabled alive and well. So we really wanted to focus on this important issues, and there's so much that our speakers are going to include. So we are really excited about this. I'm going to turn this over to Cindy, and thank you all for coming.
Just briefly, I wanted to just do an introduction. They're going to talk about their stories, and so I don't really need to belabor that. But I would like to just say the Witness to Innocence program is the only national organization in the United States composed of and led by exonerated death row survivors and their family members. The mission of the Witness to Innocence is to abolish the death penalty by empowering exonerated death row survivors and their loved ones to become effective leaders in the abolition movement. Now, Shuja will talk about his story. He was born in Lake Providence, Louisiana, grew up on a plantation in the segregated South in the 1950s before moving to Southern California, where he experienced the Watts riots and police occupation of his community. In and out of trouble, he spent much of his adolescence in juvenile institutions, and when he turned 18, he was sent to Soldat prison. While in prison walls, he was taught himself to read and write. From there, we'll talk about how he was framed for murder in 1973 and ended up on death row. We also have with us Patrick Hall from the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow. If you're familiar with that, we have our very own chapter in Trenton, Princeton. It was started in Princeton with the book discussion of Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. And then they started the organization. It's been about 7 or 8 years. And they have over 800 members and supporters. Patrick was born in Alabama, raised in Trenton. He graduated from Trenton Central High School, Mercer County Community Vocational and Technical School, and the Citone Institute and the Windsor School of Technology. So I want to just say thank you to both of you for being here today, and we're going to get started.
First, let me thank you all for having me. And when I say this, I mean from the course of my revolutionary heart. Some years ago, I didn't think this was possible. I'm not here today because of the system. I'm here in spite of the system. I'm here today because young individuals that I didn't even know their name labor to win my police. 2 little young children, 18 years old, decided one day not to go to school to learn about the criminal justice system. Before I get into that story, I want to give you a little background on me. Who am I? I'm Sujat Graham. I was born and raised in a little small town called Lake Providence, Louisiana. I grew up under racism and segregation. I grew up in a neighborhood, a little community where we had one black police officer, and he could only arrest black people. As a little boy, I grew up on the plantation, riding in the mules pulling the wagons, helping my grandfather and my grandmother make ends meet, getting up early in the morning working in the cotton field, saying yes sir, no sir to white people wasn't no older than I was. That was the South. Wasn't able to go into the room that I chose. It was chosen for me. I can remember the signs like yesterday. Also remember the signs when they were taken down, but I never seen a weapon sign. That's what Dr. King talked about. So I left the South at an early age. At that time, I didn't understand the economic realities of our situation. I knew we was poor, but I didn't know we were so poor that a mother and a father would go 3,000 miles away and leave the last 2 sons behind. At an early age, my father, I never knew my real father, but I knew my second father, and he treated me like I was his son. He went off to California in search for a better life. And after being in California and securing a job, he called for my mother and my younger brothers and sisters. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why my older brother and I couldn't take that journey. So for the next 3 years, we had to stay back with a wonderful woman. Her her name was Sophia Grant, my grandmother. It was hard. I can remember she just leaving. You know how when you're a little boy or a little girl, you know you cry and pout, and mama or dad would give in. We didn't have inside facilities, and I remember that night my mother was outside on the back porch taking her bath in the tub, and I was crying like a little boy. Mama, please take me. I figured if I cried long enough, I was going to get on that train and ride with her. But it wasn't in the cards. Got up the next morning. They went 3,000 miles away. I just couldn't understand. But like I was saying earlier, I had a wonderful time with my grandmother, Opie. And I can remember as a little boy in the first grade, we had this awful teacher, Miss Llewellyn. She was in the 6th grade, intimidated me from a little boy. And all the teachers, I never want to be in her room. From the 1st grade, I was scared. Never want to be in Miss Llewellyn. Anyway, I graduated to the 6th grade, and whoo, there I was, Miss Llewellyn. I was scared of her because she'd stand outside the door with a fan belt, and she was like, pow! And I could see this as a little 1st and 2nd grader, right? Don't want to be in Miss Llewellyn's room. But anyway, long story short, I graduated down Miss Llewellyn. Oh, I was terrified. She didn't even know I was in the classroom. I was so quiet. I'd be in the class. Grandma! Didn't say nothing. I was afraid she'd go in. Well, anyway, I went home that day, and my parents, my grandmother learned how to read in the church. And she was reading a letter, and she said, son, you go in to see your mother. You go into California. I said, oh my God, I see my mother, my little brothers. My next thought was Miss Llewellyn. I said, oh, Miss Llewellyn, you can hit me 3,000 miles away, you good. I jumped on that train, and I left just like I hated to leave my granddaddy behind. And I went off to South Central California, the ghetto of South Central. And my friend, that's where my trouble began. But first, when I walked in the house, you remember how I was saying we was poor. And excuse my language, I'm getting pissed off again, and my mother, she'd already left me for 3 years. And I walk in the house, and I want to use the bathroom. She said, oh, go in there. I walked in there. I was toilet and water running, I flush it, and whoa! I go in the kitchen, they got running water. I said, all these people is rich and left us out there with the most racist white people. I'm hating on my mama again. Never understand it. The fact that we had a 2-bedroom house, and there was 7 of them. All we had was love for each other. But that's where my trouble began. I joined neighborhood gangs and participated in neighborhood gang activity. Before I was 18 years old, I had spent 3 years of my life in and out of juvenile hall. Each time I went off, I said, each time, I'm never coming back again. But each time I went back to those same environmental conditions that created me, and I ended up in the same situation again. Just recycling. All of my friends, in and out. We ain't coming back. We grew up and go off to prison. But after being in gangs and going and worrying my mother to death, at the age of 18, I went out to jail for the last time. And a wonderful thing happened to me. They chained me up with a 45-year-old man. His name was Yasin Muhammad. Many people had tried to educate me and talk to me about being influenced by the council, but no one could influence me like Mr. Muhammad. That I would give him a listening ear like I gave him. I was an 18-year-old boy going off to prison. Mr. Muhammad used to talk to me all the way. I was tired of him. He was burning my ears, but out of respect, I didn't want to disrespect him. But it was a good thing. And when we got to prison, I still continued to listen to him. They kept us in the guidance center for over 6 months. He stayed there about 4 months, but it was a wonderful 4 months with him. He got me to start concentrating on reading and understanding history. And I said, Mr. Muhammad, I don't want to understand, I don't want to read nothing about history, because nothing is in there good about black people. And I said, why I want to learn all that for? He said, Sue, if you learn history, you're going to understand how the present had to be the way it is. From that day on, I never looked back. I tried to read every book that I possibly can. I denounced my gang activity. I got out of gang activity and joined a movement for social justice. A movement just like you have out here in society, fighting for human rights and civil rights. We was organizing and trying to bring black, white, and brown together to recognize the reality of their situation, the conditions that we were living in. The people living in these inhumane conditions for years and years at a time. This was going on in the 70s. So we started organizing to get books in. Organized to stop the racism that was going on in prison. Organized to expose the police brutality that was going on in prison. And as a consequence of being in that movement and being an actor, speaking up just like I'm speaking today, On November the 27th, 1973, a day I always remember. A human being was killed, an uprising occurred in that institution. And his name was Jerry Sanders. And for the next 9 years, I had to fight for my life. And I can tell you here today, if I'd have had a clue on what I was going to have to experience for the next 9 years, I'd have made them kill me that day. My friends, I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. I had 4 trials. My first trial, the jury couldn't determine my guilt or innocence. In my second trial, I was convicted and sentenced to die. And I can remember the words like yesterday, Mr. Brown, would you please stand up? At that time, San Quentin had the gas chamber. I was a 21-year-old man standing up. Mr. Brown, we sentenced you to die at San Quentin on December the 8th, and the gas has penetrated upon your personhood, and you're no longer with society. 15 minutes later, I was on San Quentin's death row, not knowing what to expect. But during those 2 trials that I was telling you about, those 2 students, something that I'd have never did in my life. One day, they decided not to go to school. They had heard about what was going on in the criminal justice system in Stockton. So they attended our trial and learned as much as they could. And when we was convicted and sentenced to die, those 2 little white kids, they was in the 11th and 12th grade at the time. When I was convicted and sentenced to death, they were the first people to come up and say, hear little Cindy about this dog. Say, Sujan, we're going to get you out of here. I didn't tell them that. I said, oh, my life is finished. I said, what can some young kids do against the power of the state of California? Little did I know. Those young students went out and organized and sold cookies, and anyone that would give them a listening ear, they would go off into any school, go off into any bathroom and give a conversation about the plight of our situation. And after being on San Quentin's death row for over 3 years, the Supreme Court of California overturned our conviction. I said, oh my God, I'm going home. We'll be able to see my mother, my sisters and brothers. But it wasn't in the cards. They didn't think they was going to try me a 3rd time, but they did. I was tried a 3rd time. The Supreme Court of California overturned our conviction because they systematically excluded all African Americans off the jury. Systematically. So you can't do it this way. And you would think because they systematically excluded all African Americans and the court said you couldn't do it, you'd think we'd get a jury of our peers, people of color. My friends, I had a 3rd trial. Again, he systematically excluded all African Americans off that jury. Again, the jury couldn't determine my guilt or innocence. I started off when I was 18. I was 31 years. And I couldn't conceive for the life of me. But they convicted me how I could go back and start all over. So we was hoping that it wouldn't be a 3rd trial, and it was. And then we said, oh, it's not going to be a 4th trial. No one in California that tried 4 times for the same thing. Like my old lawyer said, nobody in California act up like Sujan Graham do. He said, you're just a rebellious person, they want him dead. And he was right. They tried me a 4th time. I was beaten down. All I had left was my supporters and my strength and my commitment to a movement of social justice. Those people, the one that stood up to help me, kept me strong. And it was there in my 4th trial. I can remember it was hard picking the jury. And it was very interesting picking the jury because my lawyer gave me the opportunity for the first time to participate. And I can remember I learned through that never prejudge people. It was this guy that my lawyer never wanted to prejudge because he was vice president of a bank. They didn't want him on the jury. And we got into a big argument, and in the end, my lawyer said, you got one more opportunity to get rid of this guy over here, Sujan, he's going to convict you. And I just looked over and I said, Mr. Lawson, I can't give you a deep philosophical explanation on why I went on the jury other than the fact that I think you're an honest and decent person. I said, I'm tired of looking for people of color. That's not going to happen. I said, just give me 5, 12. Just give me 12,000 individuals, and whatever happened, let it happen. That's probably the best choices I made. Because that guy that didn't want on the jury, he was for us in the beginning. He believed in us, and he led the campaign for our actual release. So anyway, after The jury deliberated for 4 days. I was up in the cell and just pacing just like in this cell that you see out there. And we just waiting and waiting. And then they said the jury had a verdict and I had to go down. And it was a painful long walk. I come in when I was 18 and I was 31. But they're taking this walk for close to 11 years. It seemed like I had got tired. But I went down there to the jury and they told us to stand up. And I never forget this. I stood up and said, "We the jury find Mr. Graham not guilty." And I can remember saying, after 11 long years, my greatest nightmare has finally come to an end. My friends, I've been out over 37 years, each and every day that I wake up. I go through this. I could be playing with my children and say, what if California had their way? I wouldn't be able to see it. I'm sitting here today. I can say, what if California would have had their way? I wouldn't be able to see your wonderful faces. But my friend, in spite of what I went through, I did a lot of working on myself and trying to rebuild and regain my own humanity. And it was through the study and reading of Dr. King. People said, "You read Dr. King?" I said, "No, I studied Dr. King." And one of the things I learned in studying Dr. King, how to do it and do it the right way. But during my studies in Dr. King, I got really pissed off one time because he started, you know how Dr. King talk about love and compassion. And that's what I was trying to get into, right? And I was reading Dr. King and I was feeling good about myself. And Dr. King said, he got to the point, he said, "You got to love everyone." I said, "Oh my God." Dr. King was having some trouble with this shit, but you know the old saying, just keep reading. And I went to the other side and said, "But you don't have to like no one." I truly love and respect everyone. But those who violated me, I don't like them. And I'm not going to hate on them, and I don't want revenge. It's just like Tookie Williams, a young crip that was executed at San Quentin, who I got to know and tried to help. He asked the question, what's the difference between a murderer and a state that murders? And the predetermined outcome is orchestrated death. When someone robs, is robbery an act against a robber is a form of punishment to show that robbing is wrong? Of course not. When someone raped, do we enact rape against the rapist to show that raping is wrong? Of course not. Well, why would someone kill? And we say life is the most sacred thing. We kill to prove that killing is wrong. I'm not just speaking to you as a death row survivor. I'm speaking to you as a murder victim family member. My mother, brother, the little town that I grew up in. Remember, I grew up in Lake Providence, Louisiana. When I left there, he could arrest only black people. My uncle became the town policeman after I left. And he was killed. And I never heard my parents talk about execution. And I can remember when I was released, that closure thing, that's all myth. When I was released, my grandfather was talking to me as though it had just happened. Like Bud Webb said when he lost his daughter in the Oklahoma City bombing. He said the whole thing, Suja, about closure is a myth. He said no parent in life expect to bury their daughter. Your daughter or your son expect to bury you. And they bury you on the hill and they go on with their life the best they can. But he said when you lose a daughter or you lose a son, Suja, you bury them in your heart. And that's where I'm at in my final days of my life. What happened to me happened to many other people. I'm not just here speaking on the behalf of Sue Dot Graham, who did 11 years. What about my friend Derrick James, who did 21 years on Ohio's death row, who seen 56 people walk off to their death. And after 21 years on Ohio's death row, they told him to go home. Who gonna help him? What about Ray Crow? Tried once, convicted and sentenced to die. If it wasn't for DNA, the second trial, they convicted and sentenced him to life. DNA came. If it wasn't for DNA, he'd be still walking 30 years later in prison for something he didn't do. And they found the actual killer. Our director, Kurt Bloodsworth, the same thing. In prison with the person that did the rape. But Kurt lost 10 years of his life. It's because of DNA. We can make a difference. And I don't want many of you to go out and say we can make it this way. We can make a difference by us organizing ourselves in units of power and going forward with our solution and taking it to those who are responsible for bringing solutions. It's not about crime. It's not about punishment. I took that out of my vocabulary. It's about correcting. If you violate our society, my first instinct is, how do I secure society and how do I correct you? That's where we at. They try punishment in other words. It's about education. Like I was speaking with the police officer, he said, Suja, that's the problem. They call the police too much. He said, we train to do what we do. We come to the community, we start shooting. That's what we train for. He said, we need education. I said, we got it. He said, we got to educate them out of this. He said, we come to the black community, we come out with our guns. We come to the white community, we come out with our pens and papers. He said, y'all need to start communicating with each other before you call us. And that's the reality. But we can make it different. Like Dr. King, and I feel just like Dr. King. I refuse to believe that America is so tragically bound to the starless midnights of capital punishment and racism that she can't see a bright day without it. I refuse to accept it. We could be a greater nation, and we can be a better people, but we're going to have to challenge the problems of racism. We're going to have to take it on. It's going to be an uncomfortable situation. But like in the Stone Ages, when everybody stopped fighting and put down their stones and sat down and start communicating, and led us into the era that we call now civilization. So let us sit down and communicate and educate each and every one of us. Talk about our issues. Talk about the problems of society. And before I leave you, I want to leave you with the words of a condemned man that was totally guilty, but he was a human being. I never met him and never seen his face. But all I know is his lawyer called me and said, Suja, I got a man that to go kill. He never had a chance in life. And he reminded me of you. I said, I'm coming. I didn't have the funds. My wife gave me the money. I spent 2 weeks in South Carolina and North Carolina. I went to 2 executions within 24 hours. I went to jail protesting the 1,000 executions, so that was significant. I went to jail with murder victim family members. And after they bailed me out of jail the next morning, I went to South Carolina. I didn't stop there. I went and protested again. I didn't go to jail, but I went out to the death house. Now, as we were driving out to the death house, the lawyer's client said some wonderful statements. I don't know all what he said, but I do remember the parts that touched my heart. And I want to leave it with the people of this wonderful community. And it goes something like this. The most happiest of people don't necessarily have the best of things. They just make the best out of what comes their way. Happiness comes to those who struggle, those who fight, and surely to those who have served. For only they can appreciate the importance of those who have touched their lives. We can't go on well in life until we overcome our past failures, heartaches, and disappointments. The most brightest of futures will always be based on a forgiven or forgotten past. Somewhere I read, when most of you all were born, everyone around you was probably smiling and you were crying. Go on out and live your life so that when you die, you'll be the one that is smiling and everyone around you will be crying. God bless you and all your spirit.
That was the most powerful thing I've ever heard. Thank you so much. If any of you have a question, I want to take a moment, write it down, pass it to the side. We have people coming around. I'm sure many people will want to have the opportunity to share some thoughts or some questions. Ms. Judah, and again, thank you so much. And I would like to welcome Dr. Call to come up. And again, he's from the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow Greater Training Chapter. Thank you.
What I love about speakers like him and you guys is that we do this out of passion, and you can feel the passion when he speaks, and that's what I like about this, the individual group as well. You can feel the passion when you guys are doing something. So let's take a deep breath. Okay. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for inviting me here for a second time. My name is Patrick Hall. I'm from I'm the chair of the campaign of the New Jim Crow, to end the New Jim Crow. Oh my God, so he's got me all screwed up. I don't know where I'm from. In about a minute or so, I'll get back into my, but yes, let me go over a couple things with you guys, and I'm going to be giving you guys quite a bit of information today. And I know it's going to be a lot, and it may even be overwhelming at times, but take some notes, and you can always go back and read on more in depth on some of the things I'm going to be pointing out to you today, okay? But I want to start off telling you about what the campaign in the New Jim Crow is all about. And it's bringing awareness to what's happening to situations of mass incarceration. It's bringing the voices and it's bringing the information and facts about what the gentleman went through. And before I get started, I want to say one thing about the solitary confinement cell, since you guys have it, because one of the things we did was we built a replica of a solitary confinement cell. And for years we went around talking about solitary confinement, but it's nothing like feeling it. It's nothing like being inside of it and witness it and touching it. So we built this solitary confinement cell, and if you haven't been in it, you've got to visit it at least once, okay? Afterwards, I'll give you guys our website, which is, the campaign in the New Jim Crow, Trenton, Greater Trenton, and you can go on the website, or you can go on Facebook, and you can find out the events that are going on, and you can see it. If any of you guys ever visit University in Princeton, the cell's going to be set up there. I think it's the end of April or somewhere around there. So there's all kinds of opportunities you can visit. But here's the irony about the solitary confinement cell. When the Quakers first started solitary confinement, years ago, Eastern Pennsylvania, they found out very quickly that solitary confinement is no good. It does not do what they expected it to do, which is you become one in peace, with your maker. It didn't do that. It drove individuals crazy, because solitary confinement really screws up what's happening in your brain. And after 15 days, you start to actually feel it. So 15 days, you actually start to feel it. Can you imagine months, years, in a little space like you saw out there? No windows, no desks. No, it is incredible, under incredible conditions. It is torture, is what it is. It is torture. So why did years later, the United States, knowing all this, knowing the facts, brought it back? Why would someone do that? Why would anyone vote for that to come back? Would any of you in here vote for solitary confinement? You wouldn't. So you understand the kind of person you have to be to vote for that to come back? You'd have to have some sort of a hatred or some sort of a monetary value in order for you to say, yes, that's a good idea. Let's bring this back. You understand what we're dealing with, folks? There are two main reasons why we have mass incarceration. One of them is money. It's greed, it's money. The other is a racial situation. There's a hatred going on. So understand that and keep that in mind as we go through this, okay? All right, so just a little bit about myself. I grew up in Alabama. We moved to Jersey, just like a lot of folks there were better opportunities for work and things like that. I was one of those kids who lived in a very poor neighborhood. My father, I'm not going to go into this big detail, but my father was one of those guys that were an alcoholic. He was you name it, a gambler and this and that. So he made lots of money, but we didn't have any money. We were dirt poor, and we kept moving from place to place. So between the grades of first grade and third grade, I went to 11 different schools. 11 different schools. It screwed up my entire learning career. 11 different schools, okay? And then years ago, when we moved to Jersey, there were systems that put in place to help kids catch up. Some of those systems no longer exist. So that's the reason why we have school to prison pipeline where if your child is not reading at a third grade level, fourth grade, you read to learn. So if you don't know how to read going into the fourth grade, what's going to happen to you very soon? You're going to drop out of school. That's the reason why in the Trenton school system, the rate of third graders that can read, well, let me tell you what the other rates are first in the surrounding areas. They're 97 to 100% of their third graders can read at the end of third grade. Trenton has a 26%. You understand now? So some of these kids are growing up in an environment where by the time they get to 7th, 8th, 9th grade, they can't keep up anymore. They're so far behind that they wind up doing what? Dropping out. And if you drop out of school, what's more than likely going to happen to you? You're going to get in trouble. You're going to get in all kinds of this, and you're going to wind up going to jail. And so I used to think, man, why is it like that? Why do we have this situation? Little did I know that some of these situations were created. It didn't just happen. They created for a reason. And we're going to go through that for you, okay? So let me just say this. Everyone here should, at this point, understand what is mass incarceration. Is there anyone here who does not know what mass incarceration is at all? Okay, good. Let me give it to you in a nutshell, okay? Mass incarceration is an extreme rate of imprisonment. That's what it is. It's an extreme rate of imprisonment, locking up people time after time, as quick as possible. So you ask the question, why? Why do people do that? So I have two things. You'll find out there, we have brochures, right? One is the why, and it explains everything you need to know about mass incarceration, what's happening with mass incarceration, how did it come to be? Because back in 1978, when crime was on the decline, not the increase, decline, you had all of these politicians saying, we need to get tough on crime. We need to get tough on crime. For what? There's not a lot of crime going on. So why would you get tough on crime? And this went all the way to Bill Clinton and others. Why would you get tough on crime when the crime rate is declining? So you have to ask the question, why? Why do we need to get tough on crime? Why do we need to lock all these people up? Well, there's a reason why we need to lock all these people up. Anybody know? Exactly. Because mass incarceration is a business. Private prisons created mass incarceration because it is a business. And you have to look at it that way. And just so you know a little bit about me, my wife and I, we run 3 or 4 different businesses. I've been in business for my entire life. I love it. I believe in it wholeheartedly. So I get to see some insights that a lot of people don't see when it comes to business. And mass incarceration is a business. And I'm explaining to you how that is a business. The main goal of a corporation, especially large corporations, is to have a customer for life. Keep that in mind. The main objective is to have a customer for life. And here's how it works, folks. Take a look at Coca-Cola years ago. Did you guys know that there was real cocaine in Coca-Cola? There were real cocaine in Coca-Cola. And not to be biased, Pepsi had real cocaine in it too. Okay? So they weren't excluded. Now before they outlawed it, what was the reason why Coca-Cola put real cocaine in the Coke, in the soft drinks? Why did they do that? To get you addicted so that they can have what for life? A customer for life. You understand? You get the point now? Let me explain something else to you, right? The pharmaceutical companies would love for you to take those pills for the rest of your life because large corporations are looking for a customer for life. You understand now? So, when we move on, let's take the tobacco industry. There are over 700 chemicals in a cigarette that makes it very addictive so that they can have what for life? A customer for life. Are you getting the point now? Okay, let's do one more. Let's see. McDonald's. Did you guys know that McDonald's spends over 20% of their overall budget, which is an awful lot of money, people, on advertisement for children, for babies, because they want, at the time a child can say mommy and daddy, they want them to be able to say McDonald's. And it happens all the time. You can be riding along and they see the sign before you. Mommy, mommy. Before you even see it, they see it. So you understand the reason why they spend so much money? Because they want what for life? A customer for life. Once they get them hooked at a young age, McDonald's. McDonald's, that's all we want. And look at these kids today, right? They know all the different sizes and this and that because they've been doing it for years. And they're going to do it for the rest of their life. So you understand how this works when it comes to business? So, remember, mass incarceration is a what? It's a business, so keep that in mind, okay? So, for years, the prisons have been operating as a business. Years ago, even before the Native Americans were enslaved, even before Africans were coming over and enslaved, prisons have been farming out prisoners years as a business. And what we look at today as a temp agency, the state and counties were doing this years ago, and they still are doing it. They're still doing it today. I'll explain to you guys in a little bit, okay? So, businesses, a little over 40 years ago, they needed to, in any business, you need to cut your expenses, increase your capital. So years ago, they wanted to get cheaper labor. So what did they do? Their labor forces were moved to third world countries so that they can have cheaper labor. Over there, you can get away with $1 an hour or $3 an hour, and in some cases only $5 or $6 for the entire day or week. Okay, cheaper labor, and that went on for years, which is part of the reason why we lost so many jobs in the United States. So then, about 35, 40 years ago, they slowly moved some of their labor operations back over to the United States, but yet the job industry didn't increase here. I wonder why. Where did those jobs go? In prisons. They're in the private prisons. There's a whole list, a growing list of how many businesses are using prison labor. And if you look at the list, it's incredible. It's places we shop at all the time, from Walmart to Kmart to Victoria's Secret to Shell gas station, Exxon gas station, you name it, Procter & Gamble, you name it. The prisoners are actually making their products. That's why they can sell it so cheap. But they don't, because they want to make even more money. It's like buying cereal. You ever notice how the boxes got smaller, but the price is still the same and went up? But you got less in it, okay? That's how it works, okay? So anyway, so this is what's happening when it comes to the corporations. Now, a corporation, right? In order for a corporation to survive, you either have a product or a service when you have a business. A product or a service, okay? Get this. You need a labor force, and you need customers. So you need either a product or a service, labor force, and customers, and you're in business. Everybody with me now? Okay, don't fall asleep on me, guys. All right? Stay awake. Okay, prisoners, believe it or not, play 3 roles. A prisoner is actually a labor force, a product, and they're a customer. Let me explain it to you. Now, some of you guys are very smart. You've already figured it out, okay? But don't tell anybody yet. Let me do it, okay? Don't tell. I know you guys figured it out already. But let me explain something to you. And follow me on this one, okay? In terms of a labor force, you have that list that I was just telling you about, that they're in the prisons. So the prisoners are actually the labor force. That's how they become laborers. The other one is a product. And that's one that some people don't seem to grasp that much because it's not in the open. But in terms of a product, do you guys know that these private prisons, right? And you can look them up, GEO Group, CC, you can look them up. They have contracts, special contracts with states and counties, whereas these entities have to sign off on a contract that says that they're going to keep these beds 97 to 100% filled. Whether you fill them or not, you're paying for these beds. And that's one of the driving forces behind some of the counties to lock people up, because we got to keep these beds filled because we got to pay for them anyway. Not only that, it's a driving force to help bring in money when it comes to tickets and things like that. So that also makes the prisoner a product. The prisoner now becomes a product, because as many products as we can bring into the prison, as much money as we're going to get from the state, from the government, from whatever. Now, how does the prisoner become a customer? Let's go back to the product part. The product, the customer in this case is actually the state or the county or whoever's being contracted, okay? Where does the county, where does the state, where does the federal government get their money? From us. They get their money from us. So who's the customer? We are. You understand that? We are the customers. And guess what? So are prisoners. Anytime they have to buy something, which they do, inside prisons or whatever, they get taxed. So now they become the actual customer. You understand that? So they play 3 different roles, which means that the private prison is making how much money? A lot of money. We pointed out here, 2 years ago it was an $80 billion industry. It is more now. $80 billion industry. It's more now, okay? So let's move on a little bit, right? So you have these prisoners, and here's where it gets interesting for me. You have these prisoners that are working for these different companies, and they're making a little bit of money, but they're learning a lot. They become very experienced in what they're doing. By the way, in case there's anyone here that lives in Jersey, New Jersey has a pension. The New Jersey pension, which most teachers or anyone who works in the system, buys into, and you save your money, and at the end you would. Did you guys know that the pension of Jersey, New Jersey, 98% of the pension is invested in private prisons? Did you guys know that? 90% is invested in private prisons. Did you guys know that Vanguard is the largest marketing broker for private prisons, CEO group? But a lot of people don't understand that we are the ones contributing to it. Not that we have a choice, but we're going to get to something later on. So there's lots of facts that most people just don't know. You just don't know, and that's okay. But once you do know, it's funny, you can't get it out of your mind. It's there. You just want to learn more about it, okay? So anyway, let's take this. In California, Southern California, prisoners fight fires, and some of you guys probably heard that. They fight fires. They make about 43 cents an hour fighting fires, and they work 12-hour shifts. At the end of their shift, they sleep right outside on the ground, where the other firefighters are put up in hotels and things like that. They sleep right outside on the ground. So I don't have a problem with prisoners working. I don't have a problem with that. Because, okay, if you're going to charge prisoners for every little thing, whether it's a toothbrush or a soap or whatever, a bar of soap, then you need to provide some sort of an opportunity for the person to earn money. So I don't have a problem with them working. What I have a problem with is when they get out of prison, why can't they work for that fire station? Why can't they work there? Why can't they work for the store that they just made? Why can't they work for Walmart? You understand my issue? You should be able to hire this person. It should be some sort of a guarantee agreement where when you get out of here, you have a guaranteed job here. That's what it should be. But why isn't it? Why is it when a prisoner gets out of prison, it's very difficult for them to get a job, get a loan, live someplace, all kinds of issues. You know why? Because that revolving door that you hear about was not just, it didn't just happen, it was created. The revolving door was created. The reason why? Remember, the prisons themselves are businesses. And those businesses need what? They need customers, they need products, so you understand the reason why we have a declining crime rate, but yet we want to be tough on crime and we want to cause mass incarceration. Why do we want to do that? Because the mass incarceration is a business, and so we need product, we need customers, we need this. And so it's just like a McDonald's, it's just like the pharmaceutical company, right? They want to keep you living long enough, but they want you sick while you're living. So that you can continue to take pills, and they want you sick the whole time. But you can live as long as you want, because the longer you live, the more money we make. You understand how it works? And that's the same way when it comes to prisoners. The reason why you can't do anything when you get out is because they want you to maybe come back in, because it's a product. It's a product service, okay? And so, and there's nothing wrong with it as long as it's something that's more fair for the individual, for the prisoners. As long as it's more fair for the individual, then I don't have a problem with it. But when you don't hire the person that comes out of prison, I have a problem with that. And that's my issue, okay? So let's move on. What's happening now, because I told you guys how we got to this point and where we are right now and what's moving on farther down the line. Because of the things that you guys have been doing and the noise that we've all been making, politicians are starting to listen. They're starting to hear. They say, hey, we got to make some changes. We got to do something else. And so they're starting to accept bills like the solitary confinement bill that says that, okay, because I am not against solitary confinement. I'm not. There are some individuals that need to be separated from the norm because they're that dangerous. But my thing is, it should be supervised. It should be an oversight. It should be a situation where the person is not in there to where it's torturous to them, but that they're to the side. It's almost like what we do with our kids, right? They're messing up and go to your room. You know what I mean? But you don't want them to stay in their room forever. It's just until you calm down. Once you calm down, come on out and eat with the rest of the family. Okay? But for right now, you're getting on my nerves. Go to your room. Okay? We did the same thing to our children. So that's what I'm saying. So solitary confinement has its place, because if you've never been around some really dangerous people and you happen to be stuck around them, you would say, oh my God, I wish that person was in solitary confinement. Okay, you would say that. Trust me. But you don't want the person to stay in there forever. So we're not against that. This new system that's coming out is what they call a virtual prison. So the individuals won't be actually in a prison in walls. It's something like where they wear the ankle bracelets and things of that nature, except for now technology has exploded to the point where you have the technology to read your license plates, you know, to keep tabs on where you are at all time, your phones and things of that nature. So it's an e-prison that you're going to start to hear a lot more about, okay? And those are the things that are coming down the pipe and that are happening. So you're virtually a prison in your own community is where it's going. So I'm just giving you guys a tidbit of it right now, but you'll start to hear more of it as we go along. Okay, so the old brick and mortar is going out. Another area, as you guys can probably imagine, is immigration, and understand that most of the immigration centers or prisons are all owned by what? Private owners. You understand? So it becomes that's right, it's a business. So just to give you guys a tidbit of what's happening, what's going on, and that's what the campaign in the new Jim Crow, and I'm going to end with this. I do these kind of speaks all the time, all over the place, and I always look around the room to see how many young folks are in the room. And I'm happy to see all of us old fogies in here, okay? I turned 56 this year, so I got my AA, or you know, what is it, AA? I knew you guys knew what it was. Give me that discount. But I have my card, so I'm among those, and the wife too. So she
Took a lot to get here.
I'm older than her. For some reason, they send her card before they send mine. But anyway, so the campaign in the new Jim Crow is going in the direction where we're focusing on the younger generation. And so we're putting together different contests, and we have what's called the feed, which is what they named themselves. We got a bunch of young folks together and said, we want you guys to do this. And let me tell you something, they do something a completely different than what we do. Their social media, Facebook, most of them don't even have Facebook. They don't care about Facebook. They're on all kinds of different things that I have never even heard of before. But they do things in a different way, and their language is different. They can't sit here and listen for 45 minutes like we can. They can't do that. I don't know why they get ants in their pants, I don't know. But they can't do it. But what they do is completely different, and their language is different. And for some of us, it may seem offensive when we hear some of their videos and recordings, but it's real. And they don't come out like we do. We had an event with the younger folks, and we had this one young lady who's been in and out of prison, and she was a female pimp. And you guys ever heard of that? Okay, she was a female pimp. Use your imagination. Okay, and this young lady, I mean, she was in the streets. Even when they say they're not, they still have 1 foot in. Okay. But the language she used, no one blinked an eye, and she put it up on some sort of a social media. Within an hour, there was over 200 hits within an hour. We can't get 200 people anywhere, okay? But over 200 people, and they were back and forth combining, and all 200 of those people learned something about social justice. So you understand where we're going with this younger generation? So those are the focuses that we're focusing on. So I want to be able to open up for questions, give you guys time. So I am done. Thank you.
Are people filling out your cards? Do you want us to pick them up? You want to bring them up, Kate?
We got one. Anybody else? Come on.
I just want to mention also that the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow meets once a month at the Lawrence branch of the Mercer County Library. So it's really convenient, and the meetings are, a bunch of us just went last week, a lot of energy, a lot of education. And Witness to Innocence is based in Philadelphia. They have an incredible website. So if you go, there are a lot of resources, and you know, stay on top of the latest news and what different members are doing. And so it's really educational, and I would highly recommend you go. Is it a question?
Comment.
Okay. Can we do
Sorry.
cards?
We were going to do cards, but anything you want to say, we're going to share about the cards today. Yeah, pass them over.
Okay, so we're going to start with cards. Shuja, I have a question for you, and it is, how did you keep the faith when you were in solitary for so long with little hope?
I really, people ask me all the time, and I really can't. It's hard to keep hope alive. Like people say, Shuja, describe how it was on death row, and I still, after 30 years, I can't describe it. All I can do is tell people, think about the worst day you've ever had in your life, and unborn tomorrow, I promise you will be worse. That's death row, each and every day. Some days you could be sitting there telling you want to read, you want to study everything, and all of a sudden, you hear a lot of noise, books is going. I did it myself. I throw them out, the police come by, they're full of stuff. It's like a match burning. You just get tired and you just get beat down. And I think about having political support, like Sidney and Brian coming up, because my parents were living like up in South Central California, and it was like 400 miles away. So Sidney and Brian, they kept coming up on the weekend, they took turns, and so that kept me going. But there were days, like I never contemplated suicide, but that was nice. When I went to bed, it was okay if I didn't wake up.
Thank you. And Patrick, I'll ask you this question. Is the U.S. justice system corrective or punitive, and is it fundamentally racist?
Boy, what a loaded question. It really is, it's one of those situations, it's how you view it, it's how you look at it, how you see it to be. My opinion of it is that it has a little bit of all of it, in my opinion. There are, now we all know that all politicians are not the most honest people in the world. There are some that are very honest. There are some that, for a little bit of money, I'm willing to vote this way. And so, what is that person voting that way for? Is it because they have some sort of a racist background or endeavor, or is it because, hey, I don't care about them, I'm getting the money, I can send my kid to college, I don't care? Or is it, this is what I think, I'm not sure, I'm ignorant to the fact, I'm not well educated on this situation, so I'm voting this way. So I think it's a little bit of both, depending on how you look at it, and depending on what the situation is or what's going on. So I find it to be all three at different times. Mm-hmm.
And this is a question that you can both answer, and it's definitely a question that I've wondered. What can we do? What can we do to help, to end mass incarceration, to end the death penalty? And I mean, I'll just say for myself, I didn't write the question, but being from a community that's really not touched much by these issues, what do we do?
I think what we've been doing is witness to innocence. It's almost like they're utilizing us as former death row survivors that were sentenced to death to put a face. Because you no longer look at, once we've been convicted and sentenced to death, they no longer look at us as human beings. All this is awful thing, get rid of it. So what we do is education. And I think that's the key to all the problems that we have, to get an education on what's creating Suja coming back. Like I was saying, when I went to juvenile hall, I was going in and out. They were recycling us. And each time I went back to the same environmental condition, and I was back in jail and off our friends. So I think it's the education, organize ourselves, like I always tell students when I go to the universities and school. Most of you are going to be lawyers and doctors and teachers, and I want to add one more thing to your vocation. Find a call for social justice and add it to your vocation. We're going to make you a better doctor, a better teacher, and a better
Yes, I totally agree that education is the key, because if one does not know, you can't do. So you have to know. So in terms of individuals, there are many people that you come in contact with all the time, and it doesn't take a whole lot. Even if you just hand someone a piece of information. You don't know much about it, you're unsure about what to say or how to say it, so you hand them a piece of information, or you say, hey, I'm going to this indivisible event tonight or today. Come along with me. Let someone else explain it to them if you're not too sure. But the important thing is to educate people, to get people involved, to bring people together. That's the important part, because the more people know, the more you can do. And that's my answer.
And Patrick, this will be a question for you, because it's specific to New Jersey. Where does New Jersey rank in terms of mass incarceration percentages versus national? And what are there bills, other things that we can support?
It's funny because New Jersey happens to be #1 in terms of decline when it comes to crime, okay? We don't seem like it, but we are. So we're #1 in that issue. In terms of bills, if you look up, if you look up on the website, New Jersey, JerseyState.gov, you would actually find all the bills that are in place and legislation that's going through. And if you read some of them will appeal to you, whether it's in parole or solitary or whatever the case is. There's a bill out there for everything, okay? But how you can help is exactly what you guys are doing at that table. That's the most way of helping is not only educating your legislation, because believe it or not, they really don't know everything. You think they do, but they really don't. It's only what people tell them. So you have to tell them what it is that you want or what they should be focusing on. Because if you don't, they're going to go along as though everything is fine. So it's up to you to do that, okay? So Jersey, in terms of how we rank, we actually rank pretty good. Now we have a governor that we think is going to be more lenient to our side. At least that's what he promised in his campaign. So we're going to see, and we've been pushing the envelope with him. I don't know if you guys have heard of 94 No More, but if you haven't, look it up, Google it, because 94% of the people who he even said got him into office are the ones that he needs to listen to. And so there's a whole movement called 94 No More. So look it up, you get involved in that, and you'll understand how we rank and how we're doing in Jersey, okay?
Now, I had read that in terms of percentage, we have some bad statistics too, though.
Sure.
Is that correct? that we rank last in the nation for racial disparities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a lot good, but a lot to be worked on too. And then Shuja, because you're obviously a very loving person, the question is, how did you learn to love so much?
I think I did a lot of thinking when I was on death row. I went back and forth through different changes, and after going through the experience and getting out and stepping back, I decided I never wanted no one to have to experience what I've experienced. And it's not easy. It takes a lot of strength. Each and every day it's a fight. When things don't go my way and I know it's the right way, it's just really hard for me. But just constantly trying to educate myself and find solutions. And I think all the solutions that I've been able to find is trying to help organize people. Then once people get organized, they have power. And people will listen, just like now we have the people who are running for president. You never heard them come out and talk about the death penalty. Now, one of them went as far as challenging the federal government right to have a death penalty, which is a good thing. We don't need the federal government nor the state. We can deal with our situation without having to kill.
And those are the questions that I have. Does anybody else have a card? Okay, well, yes. There's a card.
Oh, card? Gentleman wanted to make a comment.
Oh.
First of all, both your speakers were very good, but there's something that I think needs to be brought out, and it's slightly alluded to every once in a while. There is a big, big difference between for-profit prisons and a state or a federal correctional system. I was with the New Jersey Department of Corrections for 30 years in administration at both the institutional level and at the departmental level. Let me tell you, we dislike for-profit prisons as much as anybody else does. They do not have the controls that we do. And I know where I speak because I used to have to write the rules and the regulations for every bloody prison in the state of New Jersey. We had to follow what is called the New Jersey Administrative Code 10A. If any of you want a really exciting read, probably find it in the library. It's about that thick. And it tells you what and when and how and who we can do. The state is under the most stringent controls you can imagine. You say that inmates want to purchase something, they pay taxes. Only in for-profit prisons, not in the state system. Send people out to work, not in the state system unless the inmate volunteers. And they can only work a certain number of hours, and then they must be brought back to their institution. So when we talk about incarceration, we're talking about two different animals, for profit and for law. We, the prison system, work on the basic tenet of an inmate is brought to us as punishment, not for punishment. And if one of our officers or one of our staff violates that rule, they will be disciplined, they will be fired. So you're not dealing with the same animal.
Okay, well, thank you.
Those for profit prisons
Thank
should
you
be
for that.
abolished.
Thank you for that information, for the clarification.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to ask a question or?
So how many percent is private in New Jersey?
I don't know what the percentage is, private
We
versus
can look at
state.
that.
There isn't any private prisons in Jersey, they're all halfway houses.
And considering the complexity of the issue, I would encourage you to take, we have resources, a sheet of resources. There is so much information available, and it really is complex, complicated. There are so many issues, there are so many, people and organizations involved that, the more we can educate ourselves, I think the better we will all be.
And if you didn't fill out any of the postcards, please do so, take it with you, or if you leave it, we'll deal with it, we'll either deliver it personally or put postage on it. But those postcards do deal with issues on solitary, etc., and particularly voting rights for incarcerated people on parole and probation, because in New Jersey, you cannot vote. And then once you are off of parole, probation, or out of prison, you have to go re-register. At least in Pennsylvania, I believe they do register you back up, re-register once you're out, but New Jersey, not so.
I can collect the postcards.
Yes, Susan?
I just wanted to make a comment that whether we're talking about private prisons or whether we're talking about state-run prisons, that there's still an astounding disproportionate number of people of color and poor people and people with mental illness that are incarcerated. And so I want to make that, I think that's a point that is
Yes.
very important. It doesn't matter whether it's public or private, that's going on.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
want to say one thing. We have a guy, his name is Albert Burrell. He became my best friend because I see myself when I see him. He did, think about it, he said, we have a society to look out for people. Here's Albert Burrell, 50-some years old. He did 13 years on Angola death row. He can't read or write. Think about staring at himself for 13 damn years. He said, how do you know about Albert? We went to the bus station, it had the names of the different states on there, and I said, I can't really see, my eyes can't see that for him. We asked Albert to read it, I had to prove to them. Albert could only say New Orleans, the rest of them he didn't know. Even if Albert committed whatever, he didn't need to be on no death row. He needed medical help, medical attention. And that's the illness that you see on death row. A lot of those people is ill. I'm not saying get them off the hook. And just because you don't want to kill someone, that don't mean you're not tough on crime. It's just that you don't want no one to die, just creating more victims. And we don't want that. We want to create more people than not more victims.
Our leader. I'm not indivisible, but these guys lead the civil rights group, and so I hope you can appreciate the amount of effort that went into today. The group of people, the civil rights team. If you guys could just stand and wave. So I thank you because that's what we're here for. There's a bunch of, if you have not filled out a postcard or any of the paperwork that's in the front, please do that. And we also have new Indivisible t-shirts that we're pre-ordering, and there's 3 papers out there, and don't be left out in the cold because you'll want one. There's a green and there's a red. I'm getting 2. I know MJ's getting 2. So Susan, so please feel free to fill that in. It'll also be posted on Facebook. both of our speakers who did amazing.
I just wanted to.
Thank you to everyone who made this event possible. Speakers Shuja Graham and the Witness to Innocence Project, Patrick Hall and the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow, the Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope Civil Rights Action Group, Cindy Ahn, Shara Durkee, Lisa Bergson, Kathy Franklin, Ellen Gibson, and Deb Monaghan, the Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope Leadership Team, the City of Lambertville and the Lambertville Police Department, the South Hunterdon Regional High School student volunteers, and the event was filmed, compiled, and edited by Caitlin Shoemaker. For more information, please visit www.witnesstoinnocence.org, www.endnewjimcrownj.org, and indivisiblelnh.com.